She had never imagined that a single day could change her entire life in such a cruel way. The alien woman, whose name was Leora, woke up that morning full of hope, thinking it would be like any other day. But fate had other plans. She had been traveling with a group she trusted, believing that they were looking out for her, that they would protect her from harm in the sprawling alien market, a place she had heard about but never truly seen until now. The market was a chaos of colors, sounds, and smells, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Stalls were stacked high with strange fruits that glowed faintly, fabrics that shimmered with moving patterns, and devices that hummed and flashed in ways that seemed almost alive. The air was thick with scents she could not name, a mixture of spices, fuel, and something metallic that made her nose twitch. She tried to steady herself, holding onto the small bag she had managed to keep with her, clinging to her few belongings as though they were the last pieces of her dignity. Her companions, however, had other plans. Leora did not understand why at first. She had trusted them, laughed with them, shared meals and stories, and now, in the middle of this crowded market, they simply turned away. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. She called out, her voice small and trembling, but the crowd swallowed it and no one seemed to notice. Panic started to rise in her chest. She ran a few steps, hoping to catch up. But the market was enormous, a labyrinth of stalls and alleyways, and soon she realized she was utterly alone. Her heart pounded so hard that it felt like it could break through her chest. She stopped and looked around desperately, hoping to see a familiar face, anyone who might recognize her, anyone who might care. But all she saw were the bustling crowds, aliens of every shape and size moving with purpose, many not even sparing a glance at her, some even staring at her with curiosity, as if she were a spectacle rather than a living being. She felt a lump in her throat, a mix of fear and humiliation. She had heard of the market's harsh reputation, but hearing about it was nothing like experiencing it. The market was known for trading anything imaginable, including those who had no one to protect them. Leora had always been careful, always trying to stay out of trouble, always trusting in her instincts, but now, standing there alone, she felt all of that training, all of that wisdom, slip away. She was no longer in control. She was vulnerable, and she hated the feeling of being powerless. Her bag, which had held her few possessions, was snatched from her by a passing vendor who didn't even stop to apologize. She cried out in shock, but it made no difference. The crowd moved around her, indifferent. She was left with nothing, not even the small comforts she had clung to. Her stomach growled and her throat felt dry, reminding her that she had been walking for hours without food or water. Every sense was assaulted by the market's chaos. The flashing lights hurt her eyes, the strange scents made her stomach turn, and the loud alien voices, some shouting prices, some bargaining, some laughing, made her head spin. She wanted to disappear, to hide somewhere safe, but she didn't know where to go. Every alley seemed just as dangerous as the main walkways, every stall a potential trap. As she wandered, she noticed the reactions of others. Many pretended not to see her, focused on their own shopping, their own lives. A few looked her over with suspicion, whispering to each other, pointing in her direction. She realized quickly that she was treated not as a person but as an object, an outsider, someone who did not belong. That thought cut deeper than hunger or fear. She had always believed that the universe was vast but kind, that even in strange places there would be someone who understood, someone who would help. She had been wrong. She tried to ask for help. Her voice trembled as she approached a group of traders explaining her situation, hoping that maybe one of them would take pity on her. But they laughed, dismissing her as if she were making a joke, or they shook their heads and walked away, muttering words she did not understand. Even her alien speech, which she had perfected to communicate in diverse markets, failed her here. She felt like a child, helpless and ignored, her words floating away into the air without landing anywhere. She sank to the ground, her legs folding beneath her, and she hugged herself as if she could hold some of her dignity close. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Hours passed, though she could not tell, and still no one helped her. She tried moving through different sections of the market, hoping for a kind soul, someone who would look past her tattered appearance and understand her fear. But everywhere she went, the result was the same: indifference or suspicion. Her clothes, now wrinkled and dirty from hours of wandering, marked her as someone unworthy of attention. She felt invisible and small, swallowed by the enormity of the market and the cruelty of being ignored. Every step she took was heavy, every breath a struggle. Her mind raced with thoughts of how she might survive the night, where she could find shelter, and how she could possibly find her companions if they had truly abandoned her. Even in her despair, flashes of fear turned into moments of clarity. She realized she could not wait for someone else to rescue her. She had to keep moving, keep looking for any possibility of safety. That resolve, fragile as it was, gave her the tiniest spark of hope. She reminded herself that she had survived tough situations before, that she was resourceful and clever, and perhaps there was still a way out of this nightmare, and so she stood, brushing dust and grit from her clothes, her eyes scanning the crowded market for anything that might offer aid. A sheltered corner, a kind face, a human traveler perhaps. But mostly she kept moving, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her, aware that in this place she was truly alone. Every step carried both fear and determination. Leora had been left with nothing, yet in her heart she clung to the small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, someone out there would see her, not as an object, not as a spectacle, but as a living being worthy of care. The day stretched on, and the alien market remained a swirl of chaos around her, each moment a test of her courage. She felt her strength waning, yet a quiet, stubborn voice inside her told her to hold on, to keep searching, to keep believing, and deep down she had no idea that just around the corner, a presence was watching. Someone who would change everything for her. Someone who would step forward when everyone else had turned away. But for now she was alone, abandoned and invisible, trying to survive a world that had forgotten how to care. After wandering through the alien market for what felt like endless hours, Leora's body and mind were exhausted, yet a small part of her refused to give up hope. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and her throat was parched from the dry alien air. But she knew that if she stopped completely, she could never find safety. Every step she took was a careful negotiation with the bustling crowd, every turn a risk because in this market, nothing was predictable. Strange creatures with multiple limbs or glowing eyes moved quickly past her, many paying her no attention, while others stared in ways that made her skin crawl. She kept her head low, clutching at the tattered remains of her bag, hoping anyone might offer a scrap of kindness. It was then, in a quiet corner of the market, that she noticed it, a small act of generosity. A vendor, busy arranging shimmering fabrics, dropped a piece of fruit, not even noticing. Leora hesitated. She had learned over the years that trusting strangers could be dangerous, but her hunger overpowered her caution. She bent down and picked up the fruit, holding it close to her chest as if it were a treasure. Eating it slowly, she felt a small spark of relief, a reminder that not all creatures in the market were cruel. That tiny moment, almost insignificant in the grand chaos around her, gave her a sliver of hope. Maybe there were others who would care if she could only find them. As she moved further, she began to notice more of these small gestures. An alien child offering her a warm smile, a merchant turning away from his stall to allow her to pass safely, a passerby giving her a spare coin without asking why she needed it. Each of these moments was fleeting, easily lost in the noise and rush of the market. Yet for Leora, they were like lifelines, proof that compassion existed, even in a place that seemed overwhelmingly harsh. She clung to these little sparks of humanity, or whatever the alien equivalent might be, because they reminded her that she was still alive, still capable of being seen, even if only briefly. Despite these glimmers of hope, the market was unrelenting. The crowds pressed in from all sides. Alien voices shouted prices, bargains, and warnings, and strange mechanical devices whirred and beeped at every turn. She felt overwhelmed, as though the market itself were testing her, trying to break her spirit. Each moment of kindness was countered by another moment of indifference or danger. She narrowly avoided being knocked over by a rushing alien with 6 arms carrying glowing containers, and a group of merchants scolded her for stepping too close to their stall, as though she were the one who had no right to exist in this space. The weight of isolation pressed down on her like a physical burden, and she felt tears prick her eyes, threatening to spill over. Yet she kept moving. She couldn't afford to stop completely, not yet. Each alley she passed, each stall she navigated was an opportunity to find someone who might truly help, an opportunity to escape being completely lost. She began observing the market with more care, noticing patterns she hadn't before. Which stalls were quieter, which paths led to more crowded areas, which aliens looked trustworthy. Her survival instincts kicked in, honed by years of careful living. She had learned that even in the worst circumstances, observation and patience could make the difference between life and despair. As the day wore on, she stumbled upon a small food stall at the edge of the market, run by an elderly alien with soft eyes and slow, deliberate movements. He didn't seem interested in rushing her away or dismissing her as so many others had. Instead, he offered her a small portion of steaming food without asking for payment. Leora hesitated, unsure if this was a trap or genuine kindness, but her hunger and exhaustion left her no choice. She accepted the food with trembling hands and ate it carefully, savoring every bite. As she did, she realized that this was the first time someone had treated her as more than just a wandering outsider, more than just an object or a nuisance. The warmth of the food and the simple gesture of care filled her with a strange, almost forgotten feeling, comfort. That night, when the market began to close and the crowds thinned, she found a quiet corner to rest. She wrapped herself in the remnants of her tattered clothing, curling up as best as she could, feeling the cold alien air against her skin. She thought about the small acts of kindness she had witnessed that day, holding them close to her heart like fragile lanterns in the dark. Each one reminded her that even in the harshest of places, compassion could exist. And yet she also knew that these gestures were not enough. They had kept her alive for the moment, but they couldn't solve the larger problem. She was still alone, still vulnerable, and she still had no idea how she could find real safety, or someone she could trust fully. Her thoughts drifted to the companions who had abandoned her. She had trusted them with her life, shared her hopes and fears, and now they were gone, leaving her to navigate this terrifying world on her own. The betrayal stung deeply, sharper than hunger or fatigue. She wondered why they had left her behind, whether it had been a deliberate act of cruelty or a simple disregard for her well-being. Either way, the result was the same. She was alone. The market, once a place of fascination and excitement, had become a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. She felt small and powerless, but at the same time a quiet resolve began to build inside her. She had survived challenges before, and somehow she would survive this too. Even as exhaustion weighed on her, Leora's mind remained alert. She began to plan, thinking about where she might find shelter, how she could navigate the market more safely, and what steps she could take if danger approached. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now scanned the crowd with a cautious awareness. She noticed which creatures moved with purpose and which seemed distracted, which paths led to quieter areas and which were too crowded. Every observation became a tool for survival. Every small act of kindness she encountered strengthened her resolve to keep going. As the night deepened and the market lights flickered against the darkening sky, she realized something important. She could not rely on luck alone. She had to keep searching for someone who might offer real help, someone who would see her as more than just a lost alien. She did not yet know that such a person was nearby, watching her with quiet attention, someone whose presence would soon change her life forever. But for now, she kept moving through the market, driven by a fragile hope and a determination to survive, holding on to the memory of each small kindness she had seen that day, and imagining that maybe, just maybe, the world was not entirely cruel. Her heart was still heavy, her body still weary, but a faint light had returned to her eyes. She knew that she could not give up. The alien market had tested her, shown her cruelty and indifference, but it had also shown her that small kindnesses could exist even in the darkest places. And so, as the night enveloped the market and the crowds thinned, Leora continued her careful journey, guided by that faint spark of hope, unaware that the next day would bring someone who would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The next day, Leora woke to the dull hum of the alien market. Her body, stiff from a restless night, curled on a hard corner of the street. The cold had seeped into her bones and her stomach ached from hunger, but a tiny flame of determination still burned within her. She knew she had to keep moving, to keep searching for someone who might help her, someone who would see her not as an object or a curiosity, but as a living being in need. Her mind was alert now, scanning the market carefully, noting the movements of creatures with multiple limbs, the rhythmic flashing of machines, and the patterns of trade and negotiation. She had learned to navigate through the chaos, to avoid danger, and to spot fleeting moments of kindness even if they were rare. As she turned a crowded corner, she saw him for the first time, a human. Humans were rare in this part of the universe, usually traveling alone or in small groups for exploration or trade. This man, tall and calm, with a kind face and steady movement, stood out immediately. Unlike the rest of the crowd, he didn't seem hurried or distracted. He wasn't bargaining aggressively, nor was he ignoring the alien creatures around him. Instead, he seemed observant, noticing small details, and his eyes, full of curiosity but also empathy, scanned the market in a way that was different from everyone else. Leora felt a strange pull toward him, a hope that perhaps, unlike the others, he might see her as more than just a helpless alien wandering alone. She watched him from a distance, unsure if she could trust anyone so quickly. The memory of betrayal from her companions haunted her, and the fear of being taken advantage of again made her hesitate. Yet something about the way he moved, the way he seemed genuinely aware of his surroundings, made her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with cautious hope. She saw him pause, glance in her direction, and then slowly approach. It was subtle, but she felt it. Someone had noticed her, and unlike the others, he wasn't turning away. He spoke first, not in a commanding or suspicious tone, but softly, gently, in a language she could understand. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm, almost soothing amid the cacophony of the market. Leora froze, her body tense. She had not expected anyone to speak to her with concern. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in her throat. She opened her mouth to reply, but all that came out was a small, shaky sound. The human crouched slightly, not invading her space, giving her the comfort of safety without words. He placed a small packet of food near her, not insisting she take it, but offering it as a gesture. Leora's hands trembled as she reached for the food. Hunger overpowered fear, and she ate slowly, savoring each bite. The warmth of the food spread through her body, and with it came a sense of relief she hadn't felt in days. But more than that, it was the gesture itself, the simple act of noticing her, of offering help without expecting anything in return, that struck her deeply. For the first time since being abandoned, someone was showing her genuine care. Her eyes, filled with cautious hope, met his, and she saw no judgment, no curiosity, only understanding and empathy. The human didn't rush her, didn't demand answers. Instead, he spoke quietly, explaining that he had noticed her wandering alone and wanted to make sure she was safe. Leora, still wary, took a moment to study him. He was different from anyone she had met. His presence radiated calm and patience. He didn't seem interested in the bustling market around him. His focus was entirely on her. Slowly, she began to answer his questions, telling him her name, where she had come from, and what had happened. She spoke cautiously, unsure how much to reveal, but he listened without interruption, his expression never changing, never showing impatience. As she spoke, she began to feel a sense of trust growing inside her. This human wasn't like the others. He wasn't dismissive, nor was he laughing at her misfortune. He was listening, truly listening, and that simple act of attention was more powerful than any food, any shelter, any comfort. For the first time, Leora realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face this world entirely alone. The human offered her clothes to replace the tattered ones she had been wearing, simple garments that would allow her to move freely and protect her from the harsh elements of the market. Leora hesitated, feeling embarrassed and exposed, but he reassured her gently, insisting that it was nothing to be ashamed of. She accepted, and as she changed, she felt a small weight lift from her shoulders, the first real relief she had felt in days. Her appearance might have been humble, but she felt dignity returning piece by piece, through the care and respect shown by this stranger. With food in her stomach and proper clothes on her body, Leora's mind began to feel clearer. She started walking beside the human, still wary but now guided by a sense of cautious optimism. He didn't take her through the crowded main streets. Instead, he led her through quieter paths, avoiding the bustling chaos that had nearly crushed her spirit the day before. As they moved, he explained that he had been traveling across galaxies, observing and learning about different cultures, and that he had a particular respect for those who were vulnerable and alone. His words, calm and sincere, reassured Leora that his intentions were genuine. During their walk, they encountered minor dangers, pickpockets, aggressive merchants, and stray creatures, but the human guided her skillfully, protecting her without overstepping or making her feel weak. Each time, Leora felt a small measure of safety return, something she had not experienced since being abandoned. The sense of being seen and cared for, combined with his steady presence, began to rebuild her confidence. She realized that she could rely on someone again, and that feeling was both strange and comforting. By the time they reached a quieter section of the market, where traders had begun closing their stalls for the night, Leora felt a sense of calm she hadn't known for days. The human led her to a small sheltered space he had arranged for travelers like her, a safe place where she could rest and regain her strength. She was overwhelmed by gratitude but also wary. Old habits die hard, but his patience and understanding slowly melted away her fear. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she slept not curled in fear but in a sense of safety, knowing that someone truly cared for her well-being. As she drifted off, Leora reflected on the day. The alien market had been harsh, indifferent, and at times cruel, but now she had encountered something rare and precious: genuine kindness. The human had stepped forward when everyone else had ignored her, offering food, clothing, guidance, and most importantly, attention. He had seen her not as an object, not as a curiosity, but as a living being worthy of respect and care. And for Leora, that realization marked a turning point. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe her life could change, that she didn't have to survive alone, and that someone, one kind human, could alter the course of her destiny in ways she could not yet imagine. After the first day of meeting the human, Leora began to feel something she had not experienced in a long time: safety. The small shelter he had arranged for her was simple, but it offered protection from the cold air, the chaos of the market, and the constant threat of harm. It wasn't luxurious, but it didn't need to be. For the first time in days, she could breathe without the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. She sat quietly, examining her surroundings, feeling the warmth of the food he had provided and the comfort of the clean clothes she now wore. Each small detail reminded her that someone cared, that someone was looking out for her, and that she was no longer entirely alone in this vast, alien world. The human, whose name she learned was David, did not force conversation. He knew that after everything she had been through, Leora needed time to adjust. Instead, he offered small gestures: fresh water, a gentle smile, and words of reassurance whenever she looked uncertain. At first, Leora was hesitant to speak much. She had been abandoned before, and the memory of betrayal made her cautious. But David's patience, the way he gave her space while still being present, slowly broke down the walls she had built around herself. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she could trust someone without fear of immediate danger or judgment. Over the next few days, they began to explore the market together. David showed her quieter paths, areas that were safe from aggressive traders and ways to avoid the market's more dangerous creatures. He never treated her like she was helpless. Instead, he guided her gently, allowing her to make decisions for herself while offering advice and support. Leora noticed how careful he was not to embarrass her or make her feel weak. He spoke to her as an equal, a partner, someone who valued her thoughts and presence. That respect made her feel dignified again, a feeling she had not experienced since being abandoned by her companions. As they spent more time together, Leora began to share her story. She spoke about her home, her family, and the journey that had brought her to this market. She told David about the companions who had left her behind and the fear and confusion she had felt wandering alone. At first, her voice was hesitant, quiet as if testing the waters, unsure if he would understand or judge her. But David listened attentively, never interrupting, never rushing her. His calm presence made it possible for her to open up in ways she had thought impossible. Each word she shared felt like a small weight lifting from her shoulders. David, in turn, shared his own experiences. He told her about his travels through galaxies, the cultures he had observed, and the challenges he had faced in unfamiliar worlds. But more importantly, he shared his belief in kindness and the importance of helping those in need. His stories weren't meant to impress her. They were meant to show her that compassion existed even in places where it seemed rare. Hearing him speak with sincerity and humility gave Leora hope. She realized that not all beings were indifferent, that some were willing to extend care without expecting anything in return. The bond between them began to deepen. Leora learned to trust David not just for survival, but emotionally. She found comfort in his presence, a sense of stability in a life that had been full of chaos. She laughed for the first time in days, small, genuine bursts of laughter that reminded her of who she had been before the abandonment. David encouraged her to do things that brought her joy, simple acts like observing the glowing fruits in the market or practicing a skill she had learned long ago. He never pushed her beyond her limits, allowing her to regain confidence at her own pace. During this time, Leora also began to notice the small ways in which David protected her. He watched for danger, subtly guiding her away from potential threats. He intervened when aggressive traders or curious onlookers tried to intimidate her, and yet he did it all without making her feel powerless. Instead, he empowered her, teaching her to navigate the market safely while still giving her space to act independently. Through his actions, Leora began to understand that true protection did not mean taking control away from her. It meant offering guidance and support so she could regain her strength and confidence. One afternoon, as they rested in a quiet corner of the market, Leora reflected on how much she had changed in just a few days. She felt lighter, safer, and more capable. The fear that had gripped her since being abandoned was slowly giving way to hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. A future where she could live with dignity, make her own choices, and perhaps even trust others again. David's unwavering support had become a lifeline, and she knew that his presence had altered the course of her life in ways she could not yet fully comprehend. Their growing trust also allowed Leora to confront the pain of abandonment. With David listening patiently, she could express her anger, sadness, and confusion without fear of judgment. She realized that her emotions were valid, that it was okay to feel hurt, and that acknowledging her pain was a necessary step toward healing. David's empathy provided a mirror in which she could see herself, not as a victim but as a resilient individual capable of overcoming adversity. Each conversation, each shared moment reinforced her belief that she was not alone, and that there were beings in the universe who genuinely cared for her well-being. As the days passed, their bond strengthened further through shared experiences. They explored parts of the market together, navigating its challenges and celebrating small victories. Leora began to notice details she had missed before: the beauty in the market's chaos, the cleverness of traders, the vibrant colors and sounds that made each day unique. David encouraged her to observe and learn, to find curiosity and joy even in a place that had once been terrifying. With his guidance, Leora discovered that the market could be a place of opportunity and growth, not just fear and isolation. By the end of Part 4, Leora had undergone a transformation. She was no longer the frightened, abandoned alien who had wandered the market alone. She had regained confidence, a sense of safety and emotional strength. Thanks to David's patience, kindness, and guidance, she had learned that trust could be rebuilt, that compassion existed even in harsh places, and that a single act of genuine care could change the course of a life. Most importantly, she realized that she was not powerless. She had agency, resilience, and the capacity to reclaim her life with the support of someone who truly cared. The story of those days in the market became a turning point for Leora. The fear and despair that had once defined her existence were now balanced with hope, trust, and the beginnings of friendship. The bond she formed with David was not just about survival. It was about human connection, understanding, and mutual respect. For the first time, she could see that her life might have a future beyond mere survival, a life shaped by choices, support, and the possibility of kindness in unexpected places. By the time several days had passed since David had stepped into Leora's life, her world had changed completely. She was no longer the frightened, abandoned alien wandering aimlessly through the chaotic market. The despair that had once pressed on her chest like a heavy stone had been replaced with cautious hope and growing confidence. She had food, clothing, and most importantly, someone who genuinely cared for her well-being. David's patience and kindness had slowly helped her rebuild her sense of self, and she was beginning to realize that survival alone was no longer her only goal. She could start thinking about thriving. Their days were now spent together, exploring the market, navigating its dangers, and learning from each other. David showed her how to find safer paths, introduced her to reliable vendors, and explained the subtleties of trading and interacting with the alien inhabitants in ways that were respectful and safe. Leora listened attentively, absorbing everything like a sponge. Each lesson strengthened her confidence and reminded her that she could face the world with courage. She realized that the market, which had once seemed hostile and overwhelming, could also offer opportunities if approached with awareness and patience. What had been terrifying was slowly becoming familiar, and with familiarity came a sense of control that she had not felt in weeks. One day, As they navigated a particularly busy section of the market, Leora encountered other aliens who had ignored or mocked her in the past. This time, however, she didn't feel fear. David stayed close, a reassuring presence at her side, and she realized that she no longer had to face hostility alone. With a newfound strength, she held her head high and moved confidently through the crowd. The experience was transformative. Each step she took, each glance she met without flinching, reminded her that she had regained power over her life, and that she could exist in the world without being diminished by the cruelty of others. Through their growing bond, Leora began to understand something she had almost forgotten: the power of connection. David wasn't just her protector. He was her friend, someone who valued her thoughts, emotions, and presence. She started to share dreams she had long kept buried, hopes for a life that felt meaningful, and even small wishes for adventure beyond the market. David encouraged her, listening without judgment, and celebrated her ideas no matter how small. In doing so, he showed her that her voice mattered, that her experiences were valid, and that she could shape her own destiny. For Leora, this was revolutionary. She had spent so long feeling invisible, ignored, and powerless that simply being heard and respected felt like a miracle. As the days continued, they faced challenges together, and each challenge became an opportunity to strengthen their trust. When a sudden dispute broke out between merchants nearby, Leora felt a twinge of panic, but David's calm guidance reassured her. He explained how to stay safe, how to navigate difficult social situations, and most importantly, how to remain confident even when others tried to intimidate her. With his support, she realized that she could face difficulties without fear, that she was capable of acting wisely and bravely, even in stressful situations. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her belief in herself. Leora also began to notice how her perspective of the market had changed. Where once she had seen only danger, she now saw potential. The vibrant colors, the intricate designs of alien technology, the cleverness of traders. Everything that had seemed chaotic before now held fascination and intrigue. David encouraged her to observe and learn, and she found herself curious in ways she hadn't felt since her childhood. She experimented with simple trades, practiced negotiating politely, and even began to enjoy learning about the different cultures around her. The market had shifted from a place of fear to a place of opportunity, and David's support was at the heart of that transformation. Emotionally, Leora felt stronger too. She was learning to trust again, not blindly but with discernment. She realized that while the world could be harsh and unkind, there were individuals capable of compassion, courage, and genuine care. David's consistent kindness had taught her that one person could make a profound difference in the life of another. She began to understand that vulnerability was not a weakness, that asking for help could be a step toward strength, and that her past abandonment did not define her future. One quiet evening, as the market lights flickered and traders began to close their stalls, Leora reflected on the journey she had taken in just a few days. She remembered how lost and hopeless she had felt when she was abandoned, the hunger and fear that had dominated her every thought, and the loneliness that had seemed impossible to overcome. Now she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the food and shelter, but for the human who had seen her, understood her, and chosen to help her when everyone else had ignored her. That gratitude was mixed with a sense of empowerment. She realized that her life was no longer dictated by abandonment and misfortune, but by courage, hope, and the possibility of meaningful relationships. With David's guidance, Leora began to explore options beyond mere survival. She thought about learning new skills, finding ways to earn her own living, and even discovering parts of the galaxy she had only dreamed about. David encouraged her to imagine a future where she had control over her choices, where she could act freely and confidently, and where kindness and compassion were central to her life. The transformation was remarkable. The alien who had once wandered the market with nothing was now a capable, hopeful individual, ready to reclaim her life. Their partnership grew stronger as well. Leora found that she could rely on David not just for physical safety, but for emotional support. He became a mentor, a guide, and a friend, someone who helped her navigate challenges while respecting her autonomy. She no longer felt powerless or invisible. Instead, she felt valued and seen. Their connection transcended the simple dynamics of survival. It was built on trust, empathy, and mutual respect. Leora realized that she had not only regained her life, but had also found a rare and meaningful bond with someone who truly cared. By the end of Part 5, Leora had fully embraced the new chapter of her life. She had transformed from a lost, abandoned figure into a resilient, confident individual. She was no longer defined by the cruelty of the market or the betrayal of her companions. Instead, her life was now shaped by courage, kindness, and the unexpected friendship of a human who had stepped forward when she had no one else. With her confidence restored, her trust rebuilt, and her hope renewed, Leora began to look toward the future with excitement and curiosity, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The story concludes with a powerful message. Even in the darkest, most hopeless situations, a single act of kindness can change the course of a life. Leora's journey shows that trust, compassion, and empathy can restore hope and dignity, and that sometimes the presence of one caring individual can make all the difference in the world. From the moment she was abandoned to the point where she reclaimed her life, Leora's story is a testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of human, or in this case, intergalactic connection.